I never thought the day I stood at my mother's funeral I'd feel the ground shift beneath me. My older brother, the one Mom trusted to handle everything, he had already taken more than $420,000 from her savings, just a week before she died, and no one else seemed to notice. Not my family, not the friends who loved her. They all assumed he was the dutiful son. I stayed silent at first, but something in me refused to let it go. If you're listening to this story right now, let me know where you're listening in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for updates. And now let me take you back to the beginning, the day my mother asked me to trust my brother completely. My brother, as Michael, was the one Mom leaned on for everything. I thought I could step back, let him handle the details, and still honor her wishes. That's what she wanted. That's what she told me in her last days. She held my hand, her skin thin and fragile, and whispered with a soft, tired voice, "Let your brother handle everything. You just need to show up." I nodded, though my stomach twisted. I wanted to protest. I wanted to say I can help. But her eyes, they had that quiet insistence that shut me up instantly. So I agreed. The funeral was simple, just the way Mom would have wanted. St. Matthew's Church smelled faintly of lilies and polished wood. The choir sang softly the kind of hymns Mom hummed around the house. People spoke in hushed tones, sharing memories and condolences. And Michael, he moved through it all like he'd been born for this role. Strong, organized, controlled, every handshake, every nod perfectly measured. I watched him and felt a mixture of relief and unease. Relief that he was capable, unease that something felt off. During the eulogy, an old friend of Mom's approached us. She leaned in, her voice low and curious. "Thomas, how about that money she saved for the boys?" I froze. The words made my chest tighten. I glanced at Michael. His face shifted almost imperceptibly, just enough to betray discomfort. He cleared his throat and gave a small, awkward smile. "Ah, it's nothing to worry about," he said too quickly. "Mom, she always wanted us to focus on family, not finances." I nodded, forcing a smile, but the unease didn't leave me. I tried to brush it off. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was overthinking. Mom had always been meticulous. I had no reason to doubt Michael, or so I told myself. Still, the memory of that friend's words lingered. Later that day, as people filed out of the church, I stayed behind a moment longer. I looked around at the polished pews, the soft sunlight streaming through the stained glass, and I tried to imagine Mom sitting here alive, smiling. The thought made my throat tighten. And then I remembered her words again, her calm, quiet insistence that I leave everything in Michael's hands. I wanted to trust her judgment. I wanted to trust Michael. But something, some small nagging feeling whispered that maybe trust alone wasn't enough. That evening after the funeral, we gathered at Michael's house. He had already arranged for catering flowers, seating everything organized, as if the day had been planned for months. I watched him move through the room, directing relatives, taking calls, confirming arrangements. Everyone complimented him. Everyone admired him. And I smiled, nodding, but the knot in my stomach tightened. Later, when the last guest left and the house fell quiet, I wandered into Mom's study. It was strange seeing it without her presence. Everything smelled faintly of her perfume, lavender, mixed with old paper. I ran my fingers along her desk, the wood smooth beneath my fingertips, and tried to imagine her there, watching me, telling me it would be all right. I had never seen Michael like this, not in private. I remembered the friend's question again, and a tiny seed of doubt took root. It was barely more than a whisper, but it was enough to make me glance toward the locked drawer where Mom kept her financial papers. Locked, always locked, with her neat little keys tucked safely away. I didn't touch it. Not yet. But I felt the first stirrings of a question I couldn't ignore. A question that would haunt me in the days to come. That night I lay awake in the guest room, the faint sounds of Portland traffic drifting through the open window. I thought about Mom, about her life, about the years she spent saving every penny with painstaking care. I thought about Michael, about his ease, his confidence, his calm control, and I felt a strange, heavy uncertainty settle in my chest. I couldn't shake it. Something was coming, something I hadn't seen yet, and I had a feeling it would change everything. The first time I realized something was wrong, I didn't understand it fully. It started with a call from the bank a few days after the funeral. Their voice was formal, polite, but the words cut through me like a cold wind. "Mr. Hale, we noticed unusual activity in your mother's savings account. We wanted to verify a recent withdrawal." I froze. My mother had always been careful with her money. She counted every dollar, tucked every cent away for a rainy day or more, accurately for her sons. I couldn't imagine her authorizing anything unusual. I asked the bank to clarify. They told me a sum of more than $420,000 had been withdrawn, just a week before she passed. My heart slammed against my ribs. I could barely breathe. I pictured Mom in her hospital bed, weak, fragile, and all that money gone. I called Michael immediately. I tried to keep my voice calm, steady, like I had done my whole life in tense moments. "Michael, did you know about this withdrawal?" He answered almost too quickly. "Yes, I handled it." I wanted to ask more demand explanations, but I stopped myself. The words he said next, they cut deeper than any accusation could. "Mom left it to me. I sacrificed," the most he said. I blinked, trying to process. Sacrificed. What I asked, my voice tight. He held up a small folded piece of paper, yellowed at the edges. A handwritten note with words scrawled in a familiar, yet somehow wrong hand. There was no date, no context, just a simple line. "Everything is yours, Michael. You know what to do." I stared at it, feeling the world tilt slightly. My mother, she would never do this. Not without explaining it clearly, not without a lawyer. Not with a simple note that could be written by anyone. I wanted to question him. I wanted to fight. But I had no proof. I couldn't even be sure yet. The days that followed were worse. Family members began to gather, talking quietly in corners. Faces I had trusted now looked at me with suspicion. Some even whispered, "Thomas, maybe you're overreacting." Michael's always been closer to Mom. I could see it in their eyes. They thought I was greedy, that I wanted the money for myself. And maybe, in a small, ashamed corner of my mind, I questioned myself just a little. Was I wrong to doubt Michael? But the gut feeling, the tight knot in my stomach, told me otherwise. I tried to stay calm. I tried to focus on remembering Mom, on honoring her memory. But the more I watched Michael, the more I noticed small things. The way he avoided my questions. The way he flinched when anyone mentioned her savings. The way he smiled too quickly, too perfectly when relatives congratulated him on his duty to Mom. One evening I couldn't take it anymore. I called Mom's former attorney, Mr. Donovan. He had been her lawyer for decades, a quiet man who spoke slowly, carefully, with the kind of patience that made you listen. "Mr. Donovan," I said, my voice low, I need your help. Something doesn't feel right." There was a long pause on the other end. Finally he spoke. "Thomas, your mother was very particular. She always insisted her estate be divided fairly. She kept meticulous records. Nothing important was ever left to chance." I swallowed hard. "But, Michael, he said she left it all to him. He even showed me a note." Mr. Donovan sighed deeply. Elaine never used handwritten notes for anything of significance, especially not her savings, not the estate. If someone tried to make it seem like she did, I'd be very suspicious. That conversation changed everything. It planted a new resolve in me. I would find the truth. I would uncover what really happened with Mom's money. I started by revisiting her house. Walking through the rooms without her presence was strange. Empty. Silent. Her desk, which once held neatly stacked papers, now held almost nothing. The filing cabinet had been cleared. Only a few empty envelopes remained. Someone had gone through it before I even arrived. The house felt colder than it had when she was alive. Every step I took echoed in my ears. I ran my fingers along the edges of the drawers, hoping for some clue, some forgotten piece of evidence. But there was nothing. Only the faint smell of her perfume and the gnawing sense that something had been deliberately hidden. I decided to talk to neighbors. Maybe someone had noticed something unusual. One afternoon, I approached Mrs. Carlson, an elderly woman who had lived next door for decades. She hesitated at first, but then spoke. "The night before your mother passed, Michael came over very late. He was carrying a stack of papers," she said. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. I didn't think much of it at the time. But, looking back, it seemed odd. My heart sank. That matched the timing of the bank withdrawal exactly. My stomach churned with a mix of fear and clarity. Michael had been there. He had taken those papers. He had accessed Mom's savings before she even passed. I went back to her bedroom, to the small, worn Bible she always kept on her nightstand. It was a habit of hers, reading a page or two every evening, marking prayers, scribbling small notes. I opened it carefully. Most of the pages were just her prayers. Small, careful handwriting that brought back memories. But one page felt different. It was thicker than the others. Its edge was sealed, glued together. I touched it lightly, my fingers trembling. Something was hidden there. Something Mom had wanted, preserved secret safe. My pulse quickened. I had a feeling, a very strong feeling, that I was about to find the piece of truth that Michael had tried so hard to bury. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the empty bank account, about the note, about the people who had already assumed Michael was in the right. I thought about Mom, about the decades she had spent saving, planning, and protecting us. And I promised myself I would not let her efforts be stolen, not by anyone. The next morning I returned to the Bible. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. Whatever was inside, whatever Mom had hidden, it was going to change everything. I couldn't stop thinking about the Bible. The thick page, the glued edge. It called to me, but I needed perspective. I knew I couldn't do this alone. So I reached out to Mr. Donovan again. He agreed to meet me at his office the next day. His office smelled of old leather and polished wood, the kind of smell that made you think of patience and wisdom. He listened quietly as I recounted everything: Michael's note, the empty bank account, the late-night visit, the neighbor's observation. Finally, he leaned back in his chair and spoke slowly, carefully. "Thomas, your mother was meticulous with her documents. Everything she considered important was notarized, witnessed, and kept in secure locations. She never left significant decisions to a simple note. Ever." I nodded. I had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed made my resolve deepen. "So, if there's a chance she changed her mind, it would have been in something official." "Yes," he said. "A will, notarized and dated. Anything else is unreliable. I want you to remember that." I left his office feeling a mixture of hope and dread. Hope because I had a path forward. Dread because I knew Michael had already manipulated enough to make people believe he was in the right. I would need more than intuition. I would need proof. I returned to Mom's house. The rooms were quiet, heavy with absence. I walked slowly through the halls, touching familiar furniture, lingering on memories. I found myself in her study again. The filing cabinet, as I had suspected, was empty. Someone had been there. Someone had gone through everything. I ran my hands along the empty drawers. My chest tightened. Whoever had done this had known what they were looking for. And then I remembered the Bible. I approached the small wooden nightstand where it rested. Picking it up, I ran my fingers over its worn cover, feeling the weight of the years of Mom's devotion. I opened it carefully. Most of the pages were familiar, filled with her small prayers, notes about family memories of church gatherings, and then I felt the thick page again. I hesitated. My heart raced. Whoever had been through this house had missed this. I traced the edge of the glued page with my thumb. It was delicate, fragile. I thought of Mom, thought of her hands, her careful planning, her insistence that everything be fair. Slowly, I began to loosen the glued edge. My fingers trembled. I could feel the importance of what I was about to uncover. I didn't rush. I had learned the hard way that rushing led to mistakes. Carefully, I pried the page open, almost holding my breath. And then I saw it, a folded document hidden neatly within the Bible. I opened it fully. My eyes widened. It was a will, complete, notarized, signed, dated 6 months before Mom passed. Everything was accounted for. Her estate, her savings, the house, every asset, divided evenly between Michael and me. Not a word about giving everything to him. Not a hint that one of us should inherit more. I sank into the chair nearby, feeling a mixture of relief and disbelief. I held the document in my hands, feeling its weight, feeling Mom's presence in every careful stroke of the pen. She had left a clear path. She had trusted me. She had trusted justice. But I knew the battle was far from over. Michael would not surrender this easily. I needed proof that would stand up, undeniable evidence. I had the will now, but I needed to confirm it. I called Mr. Donovan again. He arrived the next day. I laid the will on the table between us. He examined it carefully, checking every signature, every seal. "This is legitimate," he said quietly. "Signed, notarized, witnessed. It's exactly as it should be. Your mother wanted this division. She was very clear. I felt a wave of determination wash over me. I had expected relief, perhaps even joy, but all I felt was the weight of what had to come next. Michael had taken Mom's money. He had lied. He had deceived everyone around him. And now, I held the weapon to set things right. I approached Michael the following morning. Calm, careful. I didn't want an argument. I didn't want an outburst. I needed him to see the evidence clearly, to understand the truth, without giving him a chance to twist it further. Before confronting him, I thought back to the neighbor's words, the timing of the withdrawal, the emptied filing cabinet. Everything aligned. Everything pointed to the fact that he had planned this carefully, but I would not let emotion control me. I would let the facts speak. I waited until he was alone in the living room, sipping his coffee. I placed the Bible gently on the table. He raised an eyebrow, curiosity mixing with unease. Slowly I opened it to the glued page, revealing the will inside. His eyes widened, and for the first time in years, I saw him falter. He didn't reach for the will. He didn't argue. He just froze. "I found this," I said quietly. "This is what Mom intended. Not a note, not a claim. This is her decision, Michael." He looked away, swallowing. I could feel the tension radiating from him. I stayed calm. I let him sit with it. Let him face the truth. Later, I verified the document with Mr. Donovan again, double-checking every detail. Every signature matched. Every notarization was legitimate. The date aligned. The bank accounts were listed clearly as assets to be split evenly. Michael could no longer deny it. But the next challenge was clear. Just having the will wasn't enough. He had to be confronted, and I had to have more than the will proof of his actions leading up to the theft. The withdrawal, the unauthorized caretaker authority, the timing. Everything had to be documented. I started collecting every piece of evidence I could find. Notes from neighbors, bank statements, emails. Every detail mattered. I felt the weight of it pressing against me, but it also gave me focus. Every step I took brought me closer to setting things right. At night, I would sit in Mom's house, the Bible open in front of me, thinking about her life, about her careful planning, and about the betrayal that had taken place. I whispered small apologies for doubting, for hesitating. I promised her. I would not let her savings, her trust, be stolen without consequence. And slowly, steadily, the pieces were coming together. The evidence, the will, the timing, the witness statements. It all pointed in one direction. Michael had taken her money. He had lied. He had tried to claim what wasn't his. But soon, he would have to face the truth. For the first time since the funeral, I felt a sense of clarity. The shock had passed. The doubt had passed. Now it was time for action. I took one last look around Mom's study before leaving that night. The Bible rested where it had been the will safely inside. I touched it gently and whispered, "I'll make this right. Mom, I promise." And with that, I stepped out into the night, the weight of the coming battle, heavy but clear on my shoulders. The moment I realized the full weight of what I had found, a strange calm settled over me. I held the will carefully in my hands, turning it over, examining each signature, each stamp, each detail. Mom had been meticulous, every line, every word deliberate. She had planned for fairness, for justice for both of us. And now it was in my hands to make sure it mattered. I knew I couldn't confront Michael recklessly. Not yet. I needed confirmation. I called Mr. Donovan again. His office felt familiar now, a place where the truth could be weighed carefully. "This will," I said, placing it in front of him. "It's real, isn't it?" He examined it slowly, running his finger along the edges, inspecting the notarization. "This is exactly what your mother intended," he said. "Signed, notarized, witnessed, and dated 6 months before her passing. There is no doubt." I nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and apprehension. Relief because Mom's intentions were clear. Apprehension because Michael's reaction? I could only imagine. Later that day, I went to Michael's house. I didn't announce myself. I didn't want a confrontation fueled by anger or panic. I wanted to approach this with precision. I set the Bible on his kitchen table, leaving it open to the thick, sealed page. When he entered the room, he froze. His eyes caught the page immediately, and I saw something in them I hadn't seen in years. Fear. Not anger, not defensiveness. Fear. I spoke calmly. "Michael, I found this. Mom's will. Not a note, not a claim. This is her decision. The division she intended." He didn't respond at first. He just stared. I watched him shift uneasily, his hands tightening around the mug he held. Then he said almost quietly, That can't be valid anymore." "Mom?" She changed her mind. I kept my voice even. "Do you have proof of that?" "Not a note, not a claim. Not something you can produce after the fact." "Where is it, Michael?" He hesitated. And in that hesitation, I knew the truth was unraveling. He pulled a folded paper from his pocket, one I had seen before, the infamous note. But it wasn't notarized. It wasn't signed officially. Not a single witness had verified it. I held my gaze. I didn't need to say more. The documents, the evidence, the careful records, all of it spoke for itself. Michael had lied. He had manipulated the situation. He had tried to take everything Mom had worked for. I left his house slowly, letting the weight of the situation settle in my mind. The next steps had to be calculated. I couldn't rush. I had to gather indisputable proof. I needed the bank records, the security footage, the timeline, everything that would leave no room for denial. The bank was cooperative once I explained the situation. I requested access to their security footage for the week before Mom passed. A few days later, I watched it. My stomach tight, my hands trembling slightly. Michael appeared on the footage, calmly walking into the bank, withdrawing funds, over $420,000. His caretaker authority had expired months earlier. He had no legal right. And yet, there he was, taking every penny. I leaned back in my chair, taking a deep breath. This wasn't just theft. This was deception, betrayal, manipulation, and it had been carefully planned. I felt a mixture of anger and sadness. Anger at Michael for his actions. Sadness for Mom for the years she had spent protecting us, saving, planning, and trusting that we would honor her legacy. Next, I turned to the handwritten note he had shown me. I contacted a handwriting expert. Days later, the results came in. The note wasn't Mom's. Every stroke, every curve of the letters, it had been forged. Michael had planned this, orchestrated it, hoping no one would see through it. I felt a cold clarity wash over me. The puzzle pieces were falling into place. Michael's late-night visits, the emptied filing cabinet, the neighbor's observations, the bank footage, the forged note, it all pointed to one thing. He had stolen Mom's money, lied to the family, and tried to cover it with a fabricated story of sacrifice. I decided it was time for the final confrontation. I needed to meet him alone, where there could be no interruptions, no distractions. I didn't want yelling, I didn't want chaos. I wanted the truth laid bare, undeniable in front of him. I invited him to a quiet room, a place we had both grown up in, a place that held memories of simpler times. He arrived cautious, uneasy. I placed 3 items on the table: the notarized will the bank security footage and the handwriting analysis. He looked at each one slowly, a bead of sweat forming at his temple. I waited. I said nothing. The silence stretched heavy, suffocating. Then, finally, he spoke, his voice low, shaking slightly. I didn't know what else to do. I was drowning in debt. I thought Mom would understand. I felt a mixture of anger, disappointment, and pity. Not for him, for the situation, for the betrayal, but also for the man I had known all my life standing before me admitting the truth at last. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't yell. I let the evidence speak. And in that quiet, deliberate moment, Michael crumbled. He admitted everything piece by piece. Every withdrawal, every lie, every carefully crafted deception. The confrontation ended with no more words necessary. The truth had been revealed, the deceit laid bare. And for the first time since Mom passed, I felt a strange sense of closure, a sense that the scales of justice, however small, had begun to balance again. But I knew the story didn't end here. There were still choices to be made. How to handle the money, how to restore honesty within the family, how to honor Mom's wishes fully. And above all, how to walk forward without letting anger consume me. That night, I sat alone in Mom's study, the Bible open on the table, the will resting beside it. I thought about her life, her careful planning, her dedication to fairness. I whispered softly, almost to myself, "I'll make this right, Mom. I won't let him take what is yours. Not now. Not ever." And in that quiet room, surrounded by her presence, I felt the first flicker of peace since her passing. A clarity that the path ahead, though difficult, was the one she would have wanted me to take. I knew there would be more challenges. The family had been misled. Michael's actions had shaken their trust. But I also knew that with the will, with the evidence, with the undeniable truth, there was a way to restore order, a way to honor Mom's memory fully. The breaking point had been reached. The veil of lies had been lifted. And now, the resolution was within reach. The days after confronting Michael were tense, heavy with unspoken words. I could feel the atmosphere shift whenever I entered a room. He was quieter than usual, careful with his movements, wary of my presence. And I stayed calm, steady. I didn't need to speak. I had the evidence. I had the will. The truth was no longer hidden. The first step was to secure undeniable proof that would leave no room for dispute. I contacted the bank and requested their full cooperation in reviewing security footage from the week before Mom passed. The process was slow, meticulous. I watched the hours of footage carefully, frame by frame, noting every movement, every gesture, every transaction. When I finally saw it, my stomach sank. Michael appeared on camera, moving with deliberate calm. He walked into the bank, withdrew the full amount from Mom's savings account, and left without hesitation. His authority to handle her finances had expired months earlier, yet he acted as if everything was routine. I leaned back in my chair, breathing heavily. It was undeniable. The theft was captured on tape. I didn't want to act impulsively. I didn't want anger to drive me. I knew Michael had anticipated a confrontation, had probably rehearsed excuses in his mind. I needed absolute certainty. I contacted a handwriting expert regarding the note he had shown me, the one he claimed was Mom's final instruction. The results confirmed what I had feared. The note wasn't hers. Every stroke, every curve, every flourish. It had been forged. Michael had planned this, hoped no one would uncover it. With the will, the bank footage, and the handwriting analysis, I finally had the complete picture. Michael had lied, deceived, and manipulated everyone around him. And now, it was time for the final confrontation. I arranged to meet him privately in a quiet room, away from prying eyes and potential interruptions. I wanted him to see the evidence without distraction to face the truth fully. When he arrived, he was cautious, visibly tense. His eyes flicked around the room, landing on the 3 items I had placed deliberately on the table: the notarized will, the bank footage, and the handwriting analysis. He stared at them, then back at me. I didn't speak immediately. I let the silence stretch, letting the weight of the moment settle in. Finally, he broke. I didn't know what else to do, he said, his voice low, trembling slightly. I was drowning in debt. I thought Mom would understand. I thought she would forgive me. I felt a mixture of anger, disappointment, and sorrow, not just for the theft, but for the betrayal of trust, for the lies told to our family, for the disregard of Mom's final wishes. But I stayed calm. I let him face the undeniable truth. I pointed to the will. This is what Mom intended. She trusted me. She trusted both of us. Not a note, not a claim. The notarized will is clear. Everything divided equally. Nothing more, nothing less. He looked away, swallowing hard. His hands shook slightly. I thought it would work out, he admitted, almost whispering. I didn't think you'd find out. I didn't think anyone would notice. I leaned forward, my voice steady, but carrying the weight of years of restraint. You stole from her. You lied to the family. You manipulated everyone around you. This isn't about money anymore, Michael. It's about honesty, integrity, respect for Mom's life and her wishes. You crossed a line. He remained silent, head bowed, his chest rising and falling in uneven breaths. I could see the tension leaving him, slowly replaced by a reluctant acceptance. The truth had stripped him bare. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't yell. I let the evidence speak for itself. The bank footage, the forged note, the notarized will, all of it made the deception impossible to deny. I could see it in his eyes. The weight of what he had done finally settled on him. After a long pause, he spoke again, quieter this time. I'll return what I can. I'll tell the family the truth. I nodded. That was all I needed to hear. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about punishment. It was about restoring what Mom had wanted, about giving her memory the respect she deserved. I had no desire to escalate things further. Justice didn't need anger. It needed clarity and action. The next few days were filled with careful steps. Michael returned the remaining money, and together we prepared to inform the family. The truth was difficult for them to hear. They had trusted Michael, believed in his narrative, assumed he was the dutiful son. But the evidence was irrefutable. The bank footage, the notarized will, the handwriting analysis, everything aligned. We gathered the family quietly. I presented the documents one by one, letting each piece speak. I explained the timeline, the late-night visits, the withdrawal, the forged note. I didn't embellish. I didn't dramatize. I let the facts unfold slowly, steadily, so everyone could see the truth clearly. Michael admitted his actions piece by piece. His voice was low, shaky, but honest. He explained his debts, his fear, his misjudgment. And though anger flared in some relatives, the clarity of the evidence left no room for doubt. They could see the truth. They could understand the deception. Watching him confess, I felt a mixture of emotions. Relief, because the truth was finally known. Sorrow, because this betrayal had been deliberate and calculated. And a strange sense of compassion, because despite everything, he had finally admitted it. Finally faced it. With the truth laid bare, I made a conscious choice. I wouldn't press charges. I wouldn't pursue revenge. That wasn't what Mom would have wanted. Instead, I focused on restoring balance. Michael returned the money. He apologized to the family. He acknowledged the deception. And together, we began to repair the trust that had been broken. It wasn't easy. There were lingering doubts, quiet resentment moments of awkward silence. But step by step, the family began to see a path forward. And through it all, I held on to one guiding principle: fairness. Mom had wanted fairness, honesty, and clarity. That was what I intended to give her. That night, I sat alone in Mom's study, the Bible open before me, the will resting carefully beside it. I traced my fingers along the page, feeling the weight of her planning, her care, her life. I whispered softly, almost as if she were there. I did right by you, Mom. I followed your path. I honored your wishes. And in that quiet, I felt the first flicker of peace since her passing. The confrontation, the evidence, the confession, it was done. The battle had ended. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe without tension, without the gnawing unease that had shadowed me since the funeral. I knew there were still emotional repairs to be made, but the hardest part, the core of the betrayal, had been addressed. The truth was no longer hidden. I closed the Bible gently, placed the will carefully inside, and left the room. The fight had been won, not through anger, not through force, but through patience, determination, and the courage to face the truth. And as I stepped into the night, I felt the weight of responsibility lift slightly. Mom's memory was honored, her wishes preserved, and the family, those scarred, would move forward with honesty finally restored. The confrontation with Michael left a quiet stillness in the house, a calm that felt almost unnatural after weeks of tension and betrayal. He had returned the money. He had admitted the truth. But the weight of what had happened still lingered in the air, like a shadow that refused to leave. I spent the next morning alone in Mom's study. The Bible lay open on the desk, the second will resting carefully beside it. I traced the edge of the glued page, remembering the first moment I discovered it. My chest tightened with a mixture of sorrow and relief. Mom had trusted me. She had left a path for fairness, and I had followed it. I didn't press charges against Michael. I didn't call the police. That wasn't Mom's way, and it wasn't mine. I wanted resolution, not punishment. What mattered most was restoring balance and honesty within the family. I needed Michael to not only return the money, but to acknowledge the truth openly, to face the consequences of his actions without hiding behind excuses. He agreed. Quietly, with a heavy heart, he confessed to the family. Each word he spoke carried weight, breaking the narrative he had so carefully constructed. He explained the debts, the fear, the misguided reasoning. There were tears, there were long pauses, and there were moments of anger from relatives. But the truth was undeniable. The evidence, the will, the bank footage, the handwriting analysis left no room for doubt. I watched him, and for a moment I saw not the brother who had deceived us, but the man beneath the fear-flawed, but willing to take responsibility. That recognition didn't erase the betrayal, but it allowed for a cautious hope that honesty could guide us forward. Later, I returned to St. Matthew's Church, the place Mom had loved most. I carried the Bible gently in my hands, placing the will inside a small wooden box beside it where it belonged. I knelt for a moment, feeling the silence of the church settle around me. I did right by you, Mom, I whispered softly. I honored your wishes. I made sure the truth was known. There was no fanfare, no triumph, just quiet, deliberate closure. I felt the tension in my shoulders ease, a sense of peace I hadn't known since her passing. The family still had work to do, still had feelings to reconcile, but the foundation had been set. The truth had been revealed. Mom's intentions had been honored. As I walked away from the church that afternoon, I didn't look back. The past had been settled. The future, though uncertain in parts, felt lighter. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe freely. Mom's memory, her care, and her fairness had been preserved, and that, I realized, was enough. Thank you for taking the time to read my story. I hope it resonated with you and reminded you of the power of truth, family, and perseverance. If you feel this story touches you, please share and subscribe for updates on new stories. And if you have real-life stories of betrayal, resilience, or family drama that you'd like to share, I'd love to hear them. Please share in the comments section.